This happened a couple of weeks ago. I'm 35 and have spent years making documentaries about abandoned places. I thought I knew what to expect when I arrived at St. Michael's Hospital. I'd seen countless photographs online, but seeing it in person was different. The crumbling walls loomed over me. They felt like they had secrets to share, and the air felt heavy. I didn't feel scared, just curious. I thought maybe I'd find something unique to document. I set up my camera in the surgery room. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Everything seemed to be holding its breath. I looked around at the rusted surgical tools and old equipment. Fading photographs hung on the walls, showing patients and staff from decades ago. Their gazes felt heavy, and I thought I could feel their sadness. I brushed it off. Old places have a way of making you feel things, right? As I moved deeper into the hospital, I started hearing noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind. An old, broken-down building would have creaks and groans. But then I heard what sounded like soft whispers. I convinced myself it was my imagination. It was easy to get lost in thoughts in a quiet place. I pushed myself to explore more rooms. I found a nurse's station cluttered with medical files untouched for years. I couldn't help but wonder about the lives that had passed through here. I felt a chill as I flipped through the yellowed pages. My heart started to race. It was unsettling. I almost left, but noticed how the photographs seemed to shift when I looked away. Maybe I was just imagining things again. In the hallway, I saw a shadow move out of the corner of my eye. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind messing with me. I took a deep breath and continued. There were discussions of patients who had left this world without explanation, deaths that seemed suspicious. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I don't know how long I spent in there. Time felt weird. I began thinking about all the other explorers who had come here. What had they experienced? As the whispers grew louder, I felt an urgency to leave. My gut said I wasn't alone. I rushed toward the entrance, those shadows darting just out of sight behind me. Then as I neared the door, I stopped. I heard someone call my name. It was faint but clear enough. I looked back, but nobody was there. Just an empty hall and those damn photographs staring at me like they knew something I didn't. I fled. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I gripped my camera, heart racing. Once I stepped outside, I felt a rush of relief. But the uneasy feeling didn't leave me. What happened in there? What was real? What was just my imagination? I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe it was the place. Maybe it was me. I don't know, and that's what scares me the most. I tried to forget about St. Michael's. I really did. But the images haunted me. I couldn't stop replaying my visit in my mind. I knew I needed to return, to figure out what was real. The hospital called to me, almost like a puzzle that begged to be solved. A few days later, I found myself driving back, my stomach turning. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that stretched ominously across the ground. It felt wrong to go back, but curiosity pulled me in like gravity. I parked near the entrance, took a deep breath, and stepped inside once more. The silence enveloped me again. It felt thicker this time, more oppressive. The air had a chill that sent shivers down my spine. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. At least I had my camera, an anchor in this unsettling place. I decided to revisit the old nurse's station first. Maybe I had missed something. I swiped the dust off the surface and began sorting through the files again. I flipped through more pages, looking for anything unusual, anything that might explain the feelings I had. As I rummaged, I noticed a small leather-bound journal tucked beneath a stack of papers. It looked ancient and somehow important. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, but one entry caught my eye. It detailed a patient who had disappeared without a trace. There was a name, but strangely, no details on why or how. Just a single line about whispers in the night. My heart raced. Was this how the others had felt? I had to know more. Suddenly I heard a noise behind me, a soft creak, like someone stepping cautiously on the floorboards. I turned quickly, my heart pounding. I called out, "Hello?" No response, just heavy silence. The walls seemed to close in, amplifying my isolation. I decided I needed to leave again, but before I could move, something caught my attention. From the corner of my eye, I saw one of the photographs hanging on the wall shift slightly. I approached, feeling a powerful urge to look closer. My breath hitched. It wasn't just the movement that shocked me. The woman in the photo started to resemble someone I knew. She was a nurse, but by the time frame, she should have been long gone. Then it hit me. Her name was in that journal. I couldn't believe it. This nurse was tied to the hospital's dark past. Fear twisted in my gut and I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of files. My hands were clammy as I scanned the room, feeling the weight of those whispers close in again. The air around me felt electric, charged with something unseen. This wasn't just a curiosity, it was beginning to feel like a warning. I had to know more about the history of this place. Then I heard it again. My name, softer this time, a thread of urgency weaving through the air. Before I could process it, I dashed toward the exit, but my footsteps echoed louder than I had expected, reverberating through the empty halls. Just as I reached the door, my flashlight flickered. Everything went dark. Panic surged within me, and I fought against the suffocating darkness. That's when I saw it. A figure standing in the doorway watching me. My breath caught in my throat, and just like that, I knew I was no longer alone. I froze, unable to move, as the figure loomed in the doorway. The dim light of my flashlight danced around its silhouette, but it was too far away to make out any details. My gut twisted like a knot, and fear swelled inside me, urging me to flee. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice shaky. No response, just an eerie stillness that filled the air. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck prickling as my instinct screamed for me to run. I slowly took a step back, but the sound of the floor creaking beneath me seemed to break the spell. The figure shifted slightly, and I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on me. I knew I was cornered. I turned to the exit, knowing that escape was my only option. Just as I sped toward the door, the flashlight flickered back to life, illuminating the scene. My heart nearly stopped. There she was, the nurse from the photograph. The very same woman, her face pale and drawn, her eyes staring into mine with an unsettling intensity. "Leave," she whispered, her voice barely audible like the rustle of leaves. "You must leave." Before I could comprehend her words, a loud crash echoed throughout the hospital, shaking the walls and sending dust raining down from the ceiling. I jumped at the sound, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I bolted through the door, adrenaline propelling me forward. The corridor stretched out before me, always seeming longer than I remembered. I ran, my footsteps echoing like thunder in the silence. I didn't dare look back. The whispers returned, swirling around me, increasing in intensity until I felt them clawing at my sanity. "Leave," they hissed, layered and distorted, as if the very walls were alive with urgency and despair. Panic took over. With each step, I felt their cold fingers brushing against my skin, embedding fear deeper within me. I raced down the corridor, heart pounding, desperate for an exit. Suddenly, I skidded to a stop in front of an old door, half open and slightly ajar. My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, yet an unexplainable force drew me closer. I pushed it open, revealing an abandoned nurse's break room. The stale air felt heavy, and shadows clung to the corners. In the center of the room lay an unmarked envelope, its edges worn, as if it had been there for years. A twinge of curiosity cut through my fear. I picked it up, hesitating for a moment before pulling it open. Inside was a stack of faded photographs, each depicting the same nurse, smiling, but with an unsettling vibe beneath the surface. There was an intensity in her eyes that felt wrong. As I flipped through the images, a sickening realization gripped me. The settings were the same. The hospital rooms, the wards, each picture shown from years past. And in every single shot, there were notes scribbled across the bottom. Don't trust. The whispers know. My heart sank. It was a warning, but from whom? I rifled through the photos, searching for answers, when the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through my bones, and I bolted to my feet. I wasn't alone. Bracing myself against the wall, I could hear faint whispers rising around me again, louder this time. They weren't just voices, they were crying out, desperate. I was caught in a whirlwind of confusion and dread, knowing the shadows were closing in. And as I turned to face the door, it slowly creaked open again, revealing nothing but the dark corridor ahead. But now, it felt like something was waiting for me. What I discovered next would change everything. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The silence around me felt deeper, almost suffocating. The whispers were gone, but unease lingered in the air like a thick fog. I had to make a decision fast. The envelope still clutched in my hand felt heavy with secrets that I might not want to uncover. I stepped toward the door, trying to shake off the feeling of eyes watching me. My mind raced as I replayed the nurse's warning. You must leave. Was she trying to protect me, or was she a part of the darkness that wrapped around this place? As I hesitated, a clatter sounded from the corridor, startling me. It was soft at first, like something shifted in the walls. I forced myself to look, peering into the dark hallway. Shadows moved, but I couldn't tell if it was my imagination or something else entirely. I was trapped in a limbo of fear and curiosity, each pulling me in opposite directions. I stepped out of the break room, still clutching the photos, almost like a lifeline. I didn't want to leave without understanding what was happening. My flashlight flickered again, casting erratic beams that left me feeling more vulnerable. As I advanced cautiously, I passed room after room, each one a forgotten testament to the past. Stale air hit me like a wall as I glanced into an empty ward where beds lay abandoned, with yellowed sheets hanging loosely. I could feel the weight of despair draped over them. Then I spotted something on a bedside table, a clipboard. I rushed over and snatched it up. No patients listed, just a series of notes and names scribbled hastily across the page. "They know what we did," one line read. I felt a chill run down my spine. What had happened in this hospital? Leave. The word echoed in my mind, but I pushed it aside. I needed to find out what was going on. As I flipped through the notes, a name caught my attention. Dr. Landis. The nurse's face flashed back to my memory. I had seen her with him in one of the photographs. There had to be a connection. But just then, the lights flickered violently and an electrical buzz filled the air. My heart raced as the corridor went dim, darkness seeping into the edges of my vision. I squinted ahead, trying to catch sight of anything that might indicate danger. That's when I heard it, a soft whispering, almost melodic, drifting from the far end of the hallway. "Join us." My stomach twisted, and every instinct screamed at me to run. I bolted toward the exit, gripping the clipboard like a shield. The whispering grew louder, harmonizing into an unsettling chorus that sent goosebumps racing across my arms. I could feel something chasing me, a presence lurking just out of reach. I reached the main entrance, heart pounding. Just as I grabbed the door handle, a hand gripped my shoulder from behind. I spun around, ready to fight or flee, but there was no one there. Only shadows danced in the hallway. But the whispering didn't stop. In that moment I understood. They didn't want to let me go. I yanked the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me. I threw my shoulder against the door, pushing hard, but it felt like a heavy wall holding me back. The whispers swirled closer, an unsettling chorus that clawed at my mind. "Join us," they beckoned, but I refused to listen. I stepped back, scanning the walls for an escape route. My eyes landed on a small window at the far end of the corridor, barely illuminated by the waning light. It was my only chance. I took a deep breath and turned toward the sounds creeping behind me. willing my legs to move faster as I dashed toward the exit. But as I reached the window, a loud crash echoed behind me. The noise rattled the building, and I felt the vibration in my bones. I turned, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. Intricate shadows slithered out from the corners, creeping toward me like dark tendrils reaching for a victim. "No!" I shouted. The sound echoed off the walls, but it only made the whispers grow louder, impossibly merging around me like a fog closing in. Desperate, I gave the window a shove. It creaked open, and I wasted no time climbing through. Scraping my palms on the rough edges, I gasped as I tumbled out into the cool night air, my heart racing with adrenaline as I hit the ground outside. I lay there for a moment, breathing hard, feeling the chill settle around me, strange after the oppressive air inside. But I couldn't rest. I scrambled to my feet and stumbled away from the building, skipping over weeds and cracked pavement as I made my way back to the street. That's when I noticed it. Tucked under a bush near the hospital's perimeter was a small wooden box. My heart skipped. Instinct told me to keep moving, but curiosity pulled me in. I knelt beside it and opened the lid, revealing a collection of old letters, stacked neatly. As I sifted through them, the name Dr. Landis caught my eye again. Each letter was addressed to him, detailing complaints and concerns about unethical practices at the hospital. A pit formed in my stomach as the threads of a dark past started to weave together. Then I discovered a letter that bore a message. "You might think you're safe, but we are always watching." The ink was smeared as if someone had hurriedly written and stashed it away. Suddenly I sensed it. I wasn't alone. A feeling crept over me like the chill from before. I glanced toward the hospital. The shadows were no longer just shadows. They were figures moving in the dark, some lurking at the windows, others gliding just beyond the edge of the light. "Join us!" The whispers returned, vibrating through the stillness of the night. The realization hit me hard. I had opened a door I couldn't close. I was being drawn back into their world, whether I liked it or not. I stumbled backward, clutching the box, filled with a new sense of dread. How could I escape the memories that haunted this place if they wouldn't let me go? As the figures drew closer, I turned and fled, my mind racing. What had I uncovered, and how much did it cost me? I could hear the whispers urging me forward, but all I could think was that I needed to find out who else was trapped in this nightmare before it consumed me too. I ran, heart pounding in my chest, the box clutched tightly against my side. My legs felt heavy, like they were moving through molasses. I dashed down the overgrown path that led away from the hospital, desperation driving me forward as the whispers clawed at the edges of my mind. "Join us," they hissed. I shook my head, but the sound grew louder, wrapping around me like a tightening noose. I needed to get to the street, to the safety of the night beyond them. As I finally broke through the trees into the streetlight's glow, relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I glanced back, half expecting to see the phantoms chasing me. Instead, the area was still, eerily quiet, as if the hospital, with all its secrets, had sucked the very sound out of the air. I slowed my pace, trying to catch my breath. The cool air filled my lungs, but it did nothing to quell the sense of dread that lingered. I looked down at the box, recalling the twisted messages inside. Who were those letters meant for? And was Dr. Landis truly involved in whatever had transpired at that cursed place? I turned my attention to the road ahead, the shadows from the streetlights stretching long and narrow. Suddenly, a sharp noise sliced through the silence. I whipped around, ready to run again, but instead locked eyes with a woman standing a few feet behind me. "Please don't scream," she said, her voice trembling. She looked just as startled as I was, but her expression was filled with urgency, as if she had been searching for me. "I was hoping you'd come out. We need to talk." I hesitated. She seemed ordinary enough, but in a night filled with whispers and shadows, I couldn't be too careful. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I'm Clara," she replied, stepping closer. "I used to work at the hospital. I know about Dr. Landers, and I think I can help you, but you have to trust me. Trust. After everything I had just experienced. Why should I? I shot back, gripping the box like a lifeline. Because you found the letters, didn't you? Her eyes flickered to the wooden box. There are things you don't know, things that are dangerous. I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. Everyone's watching? Is that what you meant? She nodded quickly. Yes, but there's more. There's a reason they want you. You're closer than you think to uncovering the truth. And if you keep digging, you might find yourself in deeper trouble than you realize. I took a step back. What truth? Then everything shifted. The air around us grew cold, and the whispers came rushing back, louder than before. I looked around frantically but saw nothing. "They're here!" I shouted, panic rising again. Clara grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "We need to move now. They won't stop until—" Before she could finish, a shadow darted out from behind the nearby building, rushing toward us. I couldn't make out the figure, just darkness pouring forth like an endless maw. "Run!" Clara yelled. As we turned to escape, I felt the weight of the box dragging me down. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I had uncovered was only the beginning, and I wasn't sure how much of it I wanted to unearth. Secrets and shadows were closing in, and it felt like they weren't just watching. They were hunting. I took off down the street, Clara beside me. The pounding of my feet on the pavement matched the chaos in my mind. I couldn't think straight. Shadows chased us, shifting in the corners of my vision. "We need to get off the main road," Clara shouted, breaking my focus. She pointed to a narrow alleyway just ahead. It was dark, the kind of dark that seemed to absorb all light, but I didn't care. I nodded and veered toward it. The alley swallowed us, the high walls closing in around us. I could barely see Clara's face as she pulled me further in. "We need to find a place to hide," she said, urgency lacing her words. Just as I turned to ask her where, I heard it, a low growl emanating from the shadows behind us. I froze, my heart racing again. "What was that?" I whispered, the fear creeping back. "It's them," Clara said, her eyes wide with fear. "They're close. Stay quiet." I pressed against the damp wall, trying to control my breath. The growling grew louder, accompanied by the sound of slithering, like something dragging across the concrete. I felt like a mouse trapped in a corner, and panic surged through me. "I don't want to die," I murmured, trying to hold the box tighter. The letters felt like a weight, reminding me of everything I didn't understand, every question I needed answers to. "Just breathe," Clara said, her voice surprisingly calm despite her fear. "Listen to me, we need to keep moving. There's a door at the end of the alley that leads to an old storage shed. We can hide there." "Is it safe?" I asked, glancing behind us as the growling drew nearer. "No," she admitted, "but it's better than staying here." We crept toward the end of the alley, my sense of time warped. Seconds felt like hours, but we finally reached the door. Clara pushed it open slightly, peering inside. "It's dark, but we have to go," she urged. I could hear the growl again, closer now. I stepped inside the shed. The smell of rotting wood and mildew assaulted my senses. Clara followed and quickly pulled the door shut behind us. The faint sound of whatever was in the alley faded slightly, but I could still feel its presence looming just outside. "What now?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Listen." Clara crouched low, straining to hear. "They're not just looking for you. They want the box." I frowned. "What's in it that's so important?" She shook her head, eyes wide. "I don't know. I just know it's connected to something big, something dangerous. We have to figure it out fast." Before I could respond, a loud thud echoed from the door, rattling the hinges. The darkness pressed around us, seeming to pulse with a life of its own. "Someone's trying to get in," I gasped, panic rising again. Clara grabbed my arm. "We have to be ready to run the moment that door breaks. They won't stop until they find you." Then everything went silent. My breath hitched as I leaned closer to the door, the wood creaking beneath the weight of the moment. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure slipping under the door, stretching and elongating as though it were made of smoke. I held my breath, my heart pounding. I realized that whatever was outside wanted more than just the box. It wanted me too. The figure crept closer, slithering across the floor with a fluid grace that made my skin crawl. I could barely focus on the sound of my heartbeat, drowning out everything else. Clara's grip tightened on my arm, her eyes darting around for an escape. "Where do we go?" I whispered, panic rising in my throat like bile. "We can't go out there. It'll see us," she replied, her voice almost a hiss. I glanced back at the door as it rattled once more. The shadow stopped moving, retreating slightly as if sensing our fear. It felt like a predator studying its prey. My mind was racing. I had to do something. "Clara, wait. What if it knows about the box?" Her expression hardened. "That's why we can't let it get to us, Jamie. We need to stay hidden until we figure out our next move." The air in the shed felt stifled, every breath a reminder of how trapped we were. I could smell the dampness of the walls, and it reminded me how little time we had. My gut twisted as I thought about the box. Whatever was after me had to be connected to it somehow. Then in the dark there was a faint glimmer. I squinted, trying to make sense of it, and gasped as I realized it was coming from the box in my grasp. The letters on its surface shimmered faintly, pulsing slowly, in sync with the shadow outside. "Do you see that?" I pointed, trying to hold back my panic. Clara nodded slowly. "I think it wants the box. That's why it's here," she said, awe mixing with fear in her voice. We needed to figure out what the box was hiding. I shifted, ready to open it, but Clara hushed me quickly. "No, we can't! Not now!" she urged, fear etched on her face. The shadow outside began moving again, this time more erratic. I pressed my back against the wall, breath hitching, as I felt the weight of its gaze piercing through the door. I was terrified, feeling as if it could dissolve right through the wood at any moment. Suddenly a loud crash erupted as the door slammed open. I jerked back, eyes wide with terror. The shadow faced us now, fully formed, with an unnatural smile stretching across its features, teeth glistening like shards of glass. I knew this was the moment I had dreaded since the beginning. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Clara pulled me toward a stack of old crates, urging me to hide. I scrambled behind them, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the creature now filling the doorway. "Stay quiet," Clara hissed, her breath a whisper. The shadow moved into the shed, filling the space with a cold chill. I could hear its breathing, ragged and deep. It was hunting now, and we were the prey. As it moved closer, I noticed something strange. The glow from the box brightened even more, spilling light across the rot and decay. The creature jerked back as if burned, its shadow flickering and twisting. But that wasn't enough. It was determined to reach for me, to find what I was hiding. "Jamie," Clara laid a hand on my shoulder, "open it. Trust me. Maybe it will stop it." The creature lunged, and in that split second, I realized I couldn't just wait any longer. I had to take a chance. As shaky hands fumbled with the box, the air thickened with urgency, and the words inside felt alive, beckoning me closer. I took a breath and opened it. That's when everything exploded into light. The light burst forth like a shockwave. I instinctively shielded my eyes, but the warmth enveloped me, pushing back the cold dread that had settled deep within. Clara's fingers tightened around mine, and I could feel her trembling in reaction to the surge of energy. Then everything went quiet. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the remnants of brightness. The shed was gone. Instead, we stood in what looked like an abandoned hospital corridor, the air thick with dust. Faded linoleum tiles lined the floor, and peeling paint flaked off the walls. The contrast from the shed was surreal, and I felt my heart race. "What just happened?" I murmured, struggling to process our sudden change in scenery. Clara looked around, wide-eyed. "I don't know, but we need to be careful." The glow from the box had dimmed to a soft pulse, but it still felt like it was alive. I clutched it to my chest, and as I did, the letters began to rearrange themselves, forming new words I didn't understand. Panic gripped me. What does it want now? We took a cautious step down the corridor, and the stale air filled my lungs. Everything felt eerie. Doors lined both sides, some cracked open, revealing darkness inside. A whisper of sound echoed, not quite a voice, but something that tugged at my thoughts. "Jamie, look!" Clara pointed at a nearby door, which seemed strangely ajar. The light from the box flickered, drawing me toward the room. Without a word, I moved closer, knowing the shadow could still be out there, lurking. I pushed the door open and stepped in. The room was empty, save for a rusted gurney and a few scattered medical supplies. My heart sank as I spotted something on the floor. A small journal, its pages yellowed and frail. I picked it up, the leather cover cracked. "What do you think this is?" I asked, flipping it open. Clara leaned closer, scanning the faded handwriting. "It looks like notes from a doctor. Maybe they were trying to figure something out." A chill ran through me. The pages were filled with trembling urgency, speaking of patients who vanished and strange occurrences that defied explanation. I felt a thrill of terror. What kind of place was this? Why were we here? Then I saw it, a date circled in red ink. My breath caught in my throat as the recognition set in. This is the same date as the last entry from my grandfather before he disappeared. How is this possible? Before I could ponder it further, the pulse from the box quickened, sending a shiver down my spine. Clara watched me, eyes wide. "Do you think it's connected to the hospital?" Suddenly the lights flickered overhead, and I heard footsteps approaching. My heart raced as I stepped back, clutching the journal and the box tightly. "We need to hide, now!" But before we could react, the door swung open with a creak, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. It wasn't the creature from before, but something just as unnerving. A chill settled around us as I realized it was watching, waiting. "Who are you?" I whispered, stepping backward instinctively, knowing the answer could change everything. The figure stayed silent, and the tension thickened. I could feel Clara's grip on my arm tightening as the air thickened with foreboding, leaving us on a precipice of fear. And in that moment I understood. Whatever secrets this place held were intertwined with my fate. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure didn't move, its shadow stretching across the floor as if it were a part of the darkness itself. Clara's grip on my arm was firm, grounding me even as panic threatened to bubble over. "Do you want the box?" I dared to ask, my voice shaking as I raised it slightly, feeling foolish for thinking there was anything it could want. The figure remained silent, watching us intently. But then it spoke, its voice low and raspy like dried leaves rustling. "You must understand the truth." I exchanged a glance with Clara, fear mingling with determination in her eyes. "What truth?" I asked. "The truth about this place and those who were lost," the figure replied, taking a step closer. The air thickened around us, but I couldn't bring myself to turn away. "They call you back, don't they?" I swallowed hard. "Is it because of the box?" "Yes," it said. "The box is a key, a connection." I glanced at Clara, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. I couldn't ignore my instincts. "What happened here?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "The hospital was a sanctuary and a prison," the figure said, its eyes glimmering with a light that seemed almost human. "Patients came seeking help, but when darkness fused with desperation, they became something else. Echoes of grief, fear, and hopelessness. The walls felt oppressive, filled with the weight of lost souls I could almost hear breathing." "And what about Dr. Landis?" I instinctively asked, wanting to connect the dots. "What was his role in this?" "Dr. Landis was consumed by his own darkness," it replied sorrowfully. "He tried to harness the suffering, believing he could control it, but he unleashed something far greater." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "So, the stories, the warnings about the whispers. They were all true. Many who entered this place never left. The whispers are their voices, seeking to lure others into their world. "What do you want with us?" Clara broke in, her voice firm despite the fear swirling around us. The figure straightened, shadows shifting around it. "To free you from the cycle. You possess what is needed to break it. Your history intertwines with theirs. It's the reason the shadows pursue. It's the darkness within." The box pulsed warmly in my hands, as if echoing this connection, and I felt drawn to open it, the thought both thrilling and terrifying. "What if I can't break it?" I whispered more to myself than anyone. "Then you become part of the cycle," the figure warned. "You must confront the darkness to find the truth, and perhaps the lost." As if on cue, the lights flickered violently, and I heard the whispers rising again, more frantic, echoing through the corridor like a siren. Clara's grip was unyielding, but I could see her face betraying her fear. "Now, you must choose. Unveil what you're capable of or turn away. The consequences will follow." In that moment of uncertainty, the shadows inched closer, taking form, seemingly alive, craving my attention. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but the urgency to know the truth held me in place. If this was the moment to confront everything, then it had to be done now. I turned back to the box and lifted the lid, feeling the pulse quicken underneath my fingertips. Light burst forth again, swirling around us, drawing the darkness back, making it retreat as if caught in a spell. "What is this?" Clara exclaimed, eyes wide. "Possibilities," the figure answered simply, its voice rich with both wonder and sorrow. As the light enveloped us, images flashed before my eyes, faces of patience, moments lost in time, lives disrupted. I recognized some, and yet others felt distant, haunting echoes from the past, sending shivers down my spine. My grandfather's face appeared, his eyes filled with a desperate hope before they vanished, leaving trails of light behind. Then came a final vision. The nurse, the one who had warned me before. Her sadness and strength crafted an intricate story woven through the fabric of despair in this place. In that instant, I understood. This didn't just end with me. It was shared among those who had walked these halls. The shadows that clung to me were not just hunting me. They were lost souls crying for help, seeking an end to their suffering. With newfound resolve, I addressed the figure. "We will help them. We have to." "Yes," it said softly, "but it is your choice, and the darkness will fight back." The whispers surged again, a chorus of voices, a warning. I closed my eyes and grasped the box tightly. "Let's break this." And the light pulsed once more, casting shadows away as I prepared to step into the truth waiting beyond, knowing it would change everything. That moment lingered, suspended in uncertainty. I exhaled, feeling bravery blossom amidst the fear. There would be more questions, more challenges, but deep down I knew a choice had been made. Now I would either become part of the darkness, or at last help to unveil the truth behind the whispers.